Hi there, welcome to Pressure Point. I'm your host, Barbara Anderson, and tonight our special guest is Bill Robinson, a United Church minister from the north coastal village of Clem2. Welcome to the Pressure Point, Bill.
Thanks.
Good to have you here.
Yes, good to be here. Yes.
It's not often we get special guests from the northern part of our province, and so a special welcome to you, and we thank you for coming down and flying down to be on our program.
Thank you.
You've been a minister now for how many years, Bill?
I was ordained in 1959.
59, so
Yes.
what would that be? We're looking at 30-some years?
Yes.
Just
like,
close to 30,
yeah.
not quite.
But I started working in the ministry when early as 1937 with the
that right?
church, with no missionary at Clem2, so I kind of fill in with the elders as conducting the services.
Ah,
Yeah.
so you were like a lay minister.
Yes, for some time. Yes.
Before you were ordained.
Yes, that's right.
Wow. Well, okay. Tell us about that call that you had then. First, perhaps as a lay person called to ministry,
Yes.
and then called to the ordained ministry.
Well, I was a fisherman, as all the native Indians in BC. We have 104 canneries operating on the whole coast at that time, and fish is the major work we do in the seasonal work in summertime. In the wintertime, we go trapping.
Was that right?
Yes.
Ah.
So it was a trapping season in the month of January, just about this time, maybe 14th or 15th of this month. I went out to Arrestable Island, where there's a good trap line with two or three men.
Would you have your own trap line?
Yes, we have
your
our own
own
trap.
territory
Yeah,
that you
that's
would
right.
trap it?
That's right. We each have our own trap line. So we went out there, and during the winter it's quite stormy, as we hear the hurricane wind that is blowing today. It was like that for 5 days at that time. So we anchored at Borman's Bay, north end of Arrestable Island, and with us at that time there was 4 deep sea fishing fleet was anchored as well. It was too rough for them to go fishing. So the only communications we had at that time is the weather forecast from Bull Harbor, which comes in 8:15 in the evening and 8:15 in the morning. Would podcast the weather forecast.
Is Bull Harbor on the coast?
Bull Harbor is in the coast,
Okay.
yeah. And so when there was a traffic, they would let us know. So one night there was a traffic for the motor vessel Little Lady. That was the name of my boat. And so we listened after, and there was a message from the Thomas Crosby. And they wanted me to come in for Sunday. And so I sent a message back. It says, impossible to move. We've been tied up here, 4 lines ashore, 2 anchors out and 2 lines ashore for the last 3-4 days. It's a terrible storm.
The Thomas Crosby, we should say, is the United Church mission
boat. That's right. So Ray McCall was the new missionary skipper on the Crosby, freshly out in the Navy. And he said, well, I'll come out there, there's nothing, I'll be out the island tomorrow. So they tried, they couldn't make it, and went back. So they phoned back and says, can you come to the presbytery meeting and bring a delegate? Well, that was something new. I don't know what a delegate is at that time, you see. And said, okay, we'll be there on February the 15th, and we'll have a delegate. But they wanted to have a special service that night at Clem2, which they postponed, and we gathered with Mr. Reverend Percy Bunt, who was the superintendent of Home Mission Board at that time. So we went to Prince Rupert, all invited out to the service that night. I don't know what was coming on, and went into the service that night. First thing they did was, which is special, and I remember that they presented me a license to preach, and that was a surprise to a lot of us. And so,
what year would this have been then?
That was 1953.
1953.
Winter of 1953.
And had you been doing some lay ministry
yes,
and preaching
before that? Yeah, with the choir and playing the band and with the church. And so during the Presbytery meeting, I asked, well, this is a surprise to me. He said, well, I've never been trained to preach and to conduct services. I've done it for so many years, but I need to know more about it, because it says an old story, the blind man can lead the other blind. You fall off easily, you see. So they asked me, is there a place where I can take a course? Someone got up and says, Naramata. Well, that's new to us. We haven't heard of Naramata before. It just began those days, you know.
That was in the early days, yeah.
Yeah, so I said, okay, that'll be fine, I'll go. Doreen, I'll go. I thought that Naramata was in Vancouver. Named one of the streets in Vancouver.
Just a little ways down the road from Vancouver, like about 5 hours.
That's what I thought too, yeah. So I said, okay, so we registered to be in Naramata that fall. So we went in 53 and 54 to Naramata to study there. I felt when I was there, I didn't get enough of it, so we asked again later on, 2 years after that, if there was any way I can go back and study a little more. So I was granted a short course to go to Union College for 3 years.
And that was at that time the United Church Seminary, which has become since then Vancouver School of Theology.
That's it, yeah. Vancouver Union College. So I was there, I studied, in 59 I was ordained.
So then where did you go? Did you go back to Clem 2 at that point?
I went back to Clem 2 because we were building a new church. And when the church was completed, after 2 years there, I was asked if I can go move to somewhere else. So I told him I'd like to go to a place where I'd be most needed, where there's work. There was at the time two names come up, Port Simpson and Howsett. So we choose a Howsett. So we went to a Howsett, west coast of Vancouver Island, for 3 years. And then on to Cape Mudge for the next 3 years.
Right.
While at Cape Mudge, I had a call to come to Vancouver, because the church wanted to open up a new work there for the Native Indians. Students were coming in. They called it the Derby Lodge.
And where would that be, right in downtown Vancouver?
Yes, yeah, it's in 966 West 14th, just right off Oak.
Oh, okay.
And so we had the place with 13 beds. We sort of looked after the students with the medical service and visitors in town. So I was there for 9 years. And I moved to Clem 2 again. And I retired at Clem 2. When I retired, I had a call to go to Port Simpson at 77.
In 1977?
77, I went to Port Simpson. So in 81, we left, and back again to Port Simpson. And just last July, I left again. So I'm taking a 2-point charge now, Port Simpson and Clem 2, starting December the 6th. Yeah.
So you haven't really retired at all.
No,
You're back to work in Clem 2 and going commuting between Clem 2 and
That's
Port
right.
Simpson.
Yeah, I get even cards and letters today wishing me luck in my retirement. You must be having a good time. They don't know that I have been called again. So there's really more traveling, really more work to do now. I just came down from Port Simpson yesterday, or last night rather.
And you'll be a part of a festival of faith that's happening soon and everything.
Yeah.
Well, did you find that your training that you had both at Naramata and at the Union College at that time was helpful to you in the work you did in the native villages? Or was it too separate?
No, it really was. It was something really I wanted to get was in Naramata, because there were 75 of us attending the course that winter. And it was really exciting to both of us. We get together and work out together. It was like a big family. In the spring when we left, it was hard for us to separate. And I've never seen most of them ever since.
Is that right? Yeah. These would be people that came from all across...
All across Canada.
All across Canada.
Yeah, that's right. Some from Nova Scotia.
Well, that's interesting.
There was a Japanese boy there too at that time.
Well, you've seen a lot of changes in the villages, and you've been, as you say, from the Howsetts, which is on the west coast of Vancouver Island.
That's right.
And right up the coast of BC, and then on up to north of Prince Rupert. And what would you say were some of the changes that you saw over the years as the minister there, working in those villages?
There's a lot of changes there. Those days I lived when there was just kerosene lights, no electric lights at all, no running water, and no services at all, no planes, just a boat. A freight boat would come once a month a passenger boat with mail and freight at those days. Now it's later on when the cannery started, we have the boats come in every week then.
So you more contact with the outside world.
Yes,
as it were.
yeah.
What about some of the issues and the concerns of the people in the villages? Have they changed over the years, the concerns of the village people themselves?
Yes, much so. It's changed, and the change is quite. It's a little bit too fast for some of them. Like changing, we never voted those days at all. You see, we were just wards of the government, so we part of the whole scene at the moment now. So the villages are building up new homes, new roads, and some of them have little airports like Bala. So we have planes come in nearly every day at Clem2 and Port Simpson as well.
Have you seen a change in the church itself and the church's attitude to the native villages and the native peoples in the north? Has that changed, or do you feel that we haven't changed anywhere near enough that we should?
No, I don't see very much change there.
Yeah.
At all. It's about the same, the way with the Thomas Crosby Five still running around with the missionaries. Only the problem is with shortage of minister. Like there's no minister at Hartley Bay, no minister at Clem2, and now no minister at Port Simpson.
And you're doing that work,
I'm
filling
doing
in
that work now,
as a
filling in
retired person,
That's
really.
right,
And
yeah.
So it's been really hard to call ministers to those villages
That's
because
right.
of their isolation.
Isolation, yeah.
And have you felt like that the church has not really taken its work in that area seriously enough? Would
Well,
you
I
say
think
that?
they're serious about it, but it's just a shortage of ordained minister to come. Like Clem2, they say that's too small for ordained minister. So they've called for a minister for years and years. So I thought when they put out a call 2 years ago, I thought, well, next year I'll leave Port Simpson. I'll go back to my own hometown and serve there. And now they, as a weekend supply. But now since there's no minister at Port Simpson, I thought I'd just work in until they get a minister.
And so there's a lot of commuting back and
That's
forth
right.
because there's a plane trip. What is it, half an hour by plane or an hour?
About an hour.
An hour?
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's a lot of commuting, really,
That's
when you think of
right.
it.
Yeah.
There's something that's come up in the United Church, national church, an all-native conference. Conference being a court of the church rather than an event. But there's an all-native conference that the BC Native people have not considered really joining yet, or they've considered it and decided not to join. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think the reason why they're sort of holding back is because in our Presbyterian and Prince Rupert, it's mostly from native villages, and so is Cape Mudge in this area. So we feel we've already have our presbyteries, so we don't want to be separated. As I see myself, we've been segregated at the beginning. Now we're just integrated.
So
And why try to divide it again? Yeah.
So segregation is not the route that you think is the best route to take.
No, that's the best route. No.
That it's through integration and through having a voice in the court as it is integrated that is the best route.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What about the struggles between working with the church and accepting the church's teachings and being a part of the church, and yet knowing that in the past the church has really put aside and, in a sense, denied the heritage of the native people? Has that been a struggle for you personally?
Yes, that has been. Yeah, because there's another thing, and it was their mistake. I'll make the same mistake if I go to China and try to change the Chinese people and use my own culture with them. So that's what really happens when Thomas Crosby and Duncan came, and they thought that we were worshipping idols as well when they saw the totem pole. And so that was all out of order. So there was no singing, no storytelling. When I got to Port Simpson, with 80 senior citizens there, I thought I was going to have a closer contact and have all the stories I wanted to hear from them at the beginning. There was an old gentleman, he was 105 years old when he died. And so when I asked about him to tell the story about the beginning of the church like you are saying to me today, he said, no. I was raised in the boys' home, not allowed to mention anything about the past, about the tradition, about the culture. That's all heathen and pagan. So that was his thought. That was deep within him. But he won't tell me no story, no song, as we all have the songs and new songs. They compose new songs in the olden days with story from the chief and from tradition from each tribe. They have their own, like a club, as to say. They work with it, and they work together with others as well.
But when you say boys' home, that would be like the residential schools
Yes.
that the churches ran, sometimes in conjunction with the government, and the native children were sent there and told not to speak their language?
That's right. Yeah, that was one thing. The stuff. When I was going to school in the village in Clem 2, when I was 14, they wouldn't allow me to go to school anymore. But I managed to get back when I was 18. But I can't do that when the Indian agent comes in. As soon as he comes in, I sneak out of school.
You weren't allowed to go to school?
When I was 14 years old.
By which
By
authorities?
the Department of Indian Affairs. They're the ones that lead down to regulations with the Methodist Church.
So it went hand in hand in some
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, in some.
Has it been then really hard to try to reconcile the two? The fact that you come from a rich cultural heritage that has been virtually denied by
That's
the
right,
church,
that's
of
right.
which you are now a member and serve
That's
and
right.
are a minister of.
Yeah, I
the
felt
church.
that quite a burden to me for some time, because my grandfather, who was from Balabala on my mother's side, was against the religion or against the church when it first came. He always said to me, Bill, he says, we have our own stories. We have our own songs. We have our own names. We have our own tradition.
Yeah.
We have our own custom. Why change it?
Yeah, exactly.
And if you do that, you're going to make a bad mistake. He was on that route for some time. For finally a change, though, he made a turn to support the church.
And did he
later on.
continue on though with his own stories?
No, that begin to fade away. It's most of it now, just like our own language. Most of the villages, most of our young children won't even understand my language. If I speak Simpson, or Madoin will speak Simpson to them, they won't understand. If I speak Balabala, they wouldn't even understand. A lot of the old people those days don't understand English at all, so they used the trade language, what they call Chinook. That was the first English language we had in the coast with the Hudson Bay.
And would it be a composite of English and some of the native terminology?
All mixed, yeah.
How was it you're a Tsimshian Indian, how was it when you went to the Hausitse or Cape Mudge, working in a different tribal group? Were you accepted fairly well
Yeah,
there?
my dad sent me when I was leaving, and I said, now, Bill, he said to me, when you get to our house, we have no problem, come home right away. But we were surprised when I went to our house. About a week after I was there, they have no hall there at that time, so I was invited to a gathering of the community in the school hall. And to hear the chief spoke, he says, I'm glad you're here. And it really opened up the place for me to work on, because he said, you are one of us. And I'm glad you came, and we welcome you. That really should open the doors, every doors for me to enter, when he said that to me, both of us. Yeah.
So there was a real acceptance of you.
Real acceptance. So was Cape Mudge, and Port Simpson, and yeah.
Was that because of you personally, or because there had been good relations with the Tsimshian tribe, Bill Council?
Well, I think they had very good relationship in the Simpsons years ago. There was mates, there's quite a lot of fighting those days, to see. But when Christianity comes, it brings peace to them. That's one thing that they brought amongst the people. Yeah, and they bring a good relationship with them.
So, besides that, have there been any advantages or benefits from the missionaries? I know I've heard many of the stories that have denied the culture, denied the language, and so on, and that has been a real tragedy that the church was working hand in hand with. But have there been any kinds of benefits that were received, as you say, that maybe some of the fighting stopped, that you can see from the church having worked on the
bring
coast?
peace and love to the communities, and where there was sort of a disorganized group, they managed to be organized in the new faith, Christian faith. And to most of us, I would say, the chiefs were the main leaders in each villages in those days. And it was too bad. Again, it was the department and the church. So they said, we're going to elect our chief. And that sort of weakens the power and the conditions of the village, because chief is the main person, like your mayor here in Vancouver. They were the mayor. They were the ones that give the instructions with the council to the village. And when this new order was given to the villages from the department and the church that we just elect our chief, that really destroyed the power of our own culture, our tradition, our custom. So I belong to the Raven tribe, and there's the Blackfish tribe, and the Wolf, and the Eagles. Those will have their own power and own relationship which they work together. And they were sort of killed off, as to say, as much as our language is today.
So you had a way of giving authority to people.
Yes.
And to have someone from the outside come in and say, no, we want to do it this way.
Yeah, that's right.
Just destroyed the whole fabric of that culture.
That was the one bad thing about it, yeah.
Among
If they would come in, like I think there was one man that really did a good job, and I went to the home which he built up in Metlakatla, Alaska. He came to Port Simpson in 1956. And first thing he did, he learned the culture, he learned the language.
Who was that?
William Duncan.
Oh, yes.
And Thomas Crosby did the same thing too. And when he got to know the language and the tradition and the able to speak it, he was well accepted into it because he spoke the language. Now Duncan had trouble with some work in Metlakatla, BC, so he moved his tribe over to 800 and moved over to Metlakatla, Alaska, which is a thriving, progressive little village today. They have their own big cannery, they have the big sawmill, sending logs, and they own the whole island. Yeah.
So that was one attempt at integrating the Christian faith with the native culture that worked. Have there been other attempts? Have you been able to do that in some way in your ministry?
No. There's too many rules and regulations laid out already by the government. So, we'll have to get permit to go out and get some fish sometime.
Yes.
Yeah, and the license is getting quite high these days too.
What about rules and regulations of the church? Are they kind of constraining too at times?
No, I don't think so. It goes along with them pretty well.
But in a sense, we're too late. I mean, as you say, there are people who have died now who had those stories and those songs.
Stories, and they were beautiful stories too.
And we've lost them.
Completely lost. The only way we can get stories from Metlakatla, Alaska, which comes from Port Simpson, was written by professors who are in Washington.
Huh.
And they were down the coast. They got the stories, lovely stories from them. Had we had some people come in there and write those stories, it would have been excellent today.
So these people in Washington recorded those stories at some point?
Yes, that's right.
And so you'd have to go down there to...
Yeah, they got them from... I got a book or two in the house that they've written. Yes. That's the only thing that's written on the Port Simpson area. I don't know what Bala Bala has, and Clem2's got none at all.
And Clem2 and Port Simpson are both Tsimshian villages.
That's right. That's the end of the Tsimshian speaking people is Clem2, and then on north. The rest is Bala Bala and different languages all the way through. There's 33 different dialects in BC.
Wow.
And they're not the same. They're all different.
All different in each village.
Yeah.
Well, in 1986, the United Church issued an apology to the Native peoples of Canada for the way in which the gospel was brought to those people. Not the fact that it had been brought, but the way in which it had been brought to the native villages and the damage that had been done to the native culture. What was your feeling or response to that apology? Did you have any thoughts about it at the time?
If it really came directly from them without anybody saying to us, now you make that bad mistake, if they realized what they've made a mistake, it would have been a positive, very positive word for me to hear. But they were told, that you make a mistake, we need your apology. And so they make that up, which was good in some way, and to me it was far too late. It was far destroyed already.
So you feel that if it had come from the European cultured people, the United Church people of the mainstream in the southern part of Canada, themselves, without having come from, say, an outside source of, say, people saying, you need to make that apology.
Yes,
That you felt it came from the outside, therefore it wasn't perhaps as sincere as it could have been?
Yes, it would have been. To most of the people, I don't think they heard that, but that doesn't mean anything to them at all.
Things haven't changed in spite of that.
No, haven't changed.
Yeah.
No, it's gone already.
What kinds of changes would you like to see as a result of that, or because of, you know, the kinds of injustices that need to be redressed? What would be top on your list at this point?
To me, to work in, see, there's no such thing as other department, like the Department of Indian Affairs. We're the only ones in BC. And I was talking to a lady just before Christmas, and from the different place, and they said, why isn't there a department of Chinese or Japanese or
exactly.
other? Why wouldn't you look after them that way? Why just you? And they were surprised to hear that we didn't even know when our Indian Act was written up. We weren't even in contact or maybe have any word in the Indian
No
Act.
consultation
No
at all.
consultation whatsoever. And so it's just brought to you see. So it's kind of hard to take this away now, you see, as we now. And I guess I would say that things are changing. We're beginning to make stride closely. We managed to accept the mistakes. And we know it was mostly a mistake. It wasn't there for, it was their mistake because they didn't know what was going to happen today. If they know what was going to happen today, that we're going to integrate and work together. That I could be here in Bill Robinson and talk to you today, which wouldn't be allowed if it was 50 or 60 years ago. But now it's all different. You're part of me and I'm part of you. We're together as United Church people, and we call ourselves working in the kingdom of God.
What's the future for the native villages on the coast? We just have a very brief minute left, but could you give us a word about what do you think the future would be?
The future of the native Indians, as I would say, which is almost too late again, is education. There's not too many of us in university and with trades, because being a fisherman, being a trapper, being a logger, why should I go when I can make all kinds of money in one month?
Yes.
You see, it's mostly seasonal work, but you know it's kind of hard to change. A lot of our fishermen native Indians are still fishing today, and they're still doing pretty good. It's doing very well. They get big boats.
But you see that there is a need for education and
There's need for education so they can work in office and have their trades now, which we can't get no job in the villages anymore. What's one of the biggest mistakes they ever made was reserve. If there was no reservation, it's like Clem 2, I could have a good lot somewhere. I could have my own place somewhere as it built up. But it's sort of place you want, this is where you belong and stay there, you see.
So there's still mistakes that need to be...
Yeah, that should be corrected. That's one of the biggest mistakes is reservation.
We'd have to have a whole new program to go into that, and our time is run up at this point.
Right.
But I want to thank you very much for being with us, Bill.
It's nice to have this opportunity to talk with you, too.
It's been a pleasure to talk with you, too. My pleasure. And thank you for joining us on The Pressure Point. Good evening, and God bless.